Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. Now, experts say that tomorrow's midterm budget policy statement will present Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana with a golden opportunity to announce his influence. This as South Africa continues to deal with austerity measures. Godongwana will deliver his first medium-term budget policy statement on Thursday. Meanwhile, some analysts say that they don't expect big announcements regarding tax changes or any other policy changes. Inkunzi Wealth Group Chief Executive Officer Own Nkomo joins us now via Zoom for his thoughts ahead of the budget presentation. Owen, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for having me.
All right. So, as journalists, we often say things like the most important budget statement to be delivered. But sometimes it is true. And I just wonder how important it is for South Africa, but also for Enoch Godongwana himself, to set the tone for his office.
Thank you, Peter. It is a very important budget statement for the country, particularly, as you put it, for Minister Godongwana. It's the first time he's going to be addressing the nation since he's been given the right to look after our purse. And I think it's very important for him to hopefully build on what Mr. Tito Mboweni left as a framework for our growth and for minimization of national of overspend and unnecessary expenditure in the fiscus. And it also comes at a very critical time in the economy where we are, if I can take the liberty to say, we have dealt with quite a lot of the COVID challenges, and we're now focusing on growing the economy. We try and get people back at work, and at the same time, we're dealing with this major challenge of ESCOM. These rolling so-called blackouts that are not blackouts, as we heard today from Mr. Andre Durator. So it's coming at a very important time, Peter. And the decisions that he makes, I hope that he's going to make very strong decisions. And the last consideration is obviously the fact that the ANC hasn't had a really good showing in the recent municipal elections. I don't know if it's a major reflection of what's going to happen with the national elections, but I think, as we have always seen in the past, there is a need by the ruling party to always treat the voting populace with kid gloves, which talks to issues like the social responsibility funding that the government is always taking a responsibility for, because of the fact that people are unemployed and the economy is not growing. It's going to be a very difficult budget, but I think that the first few salvos that he shot when he became minister indicated to us that he would like to be very prudent when it comes to using government allocation of the national fiscus.
All right, so before we get into perhaps some of the specific items that he has to consider and maybe deal with, just help our viewers understand why we have this medium-term budget statement. What is it supposed to tell us?
It is important in the sense that it gives us a chance to see halfway through the financial year how well the government has done in terms of sticking to its mandate that it gave itself in the February budget, which is the main national budget. So the October budget gives us a chance to look and say, okay, we are doing well, we're on track here, this is how our numbers are looking, and maybe we do think we need to reallocate some of the funding from the ministries that previously got a lot more cash in February, and we're redirecting that money to ministries that have, over the past 6 months, indicated that they need a closer attention from a funding perspective by the government. So from that perspective, I think it is very essential for us to not have to wait for 1 year to assess the impact of the February budget, Peter.
All right, so what's in the debit and credit columns as he tries to figure out what needs to happen for the second half?
Look, I mean, for me, it's a simple equation that needs to be fixed, an equation that says, where will the money come from and just how much money will come in? And in this case, where is that money going? And I think that if I was Mr. Godongwana, I'll try and create my own way of thinking about things. I believe that we need to be very careful about a scenario where we continue to spend tax monies without investing in the sources of that tax this money. I believe the government has to be a big partner to the private sector and help the private sector create jobs and help the private sector focus on helping the economy to grow once again. Because in order for us to sustain this big social wage bill, in order for us to maintain the big government wage bill and all these other costs, talking about ESCOM, in order for us to maintain the ability to rescue the state-owned enterprises, which we really shouldn't be doing, I do believe that the government needs to try and find a balance between, boosting the sources of this tax revenue by creating more jobs, by enabling companies to create more jobs and grow the economy, as well as balancing the right-hand side where we are spending this money. Where we're spending this money, is it the right place to spend the money? For example, Peter, I asked a question to Andre Durator this afternoon where I say to him, just how much is the amount of money that will see ESCOM being able to deal with this problem permanently, the problem of these rolling blackouts or load shedding that we're currently going through. And he explained that potentially 12 billion rand is what goes into maintaining the infrastructure at ESCOM per year. But here it comes, we're driving a very old car which needs to be refurbished totally. And therefore you can see that we need a whole lot of money to make sure that ESCOM is looked after and ESCOM doesn't become a problem for the next 5 to 10 to 15, 20 years and into the next generation. Because without ESCOM being sorted out, Peter, there is no one who's going to be very excited about coming to invest in the country. The corporate South Africa is not going to be excited about investing the cash they are sitting on at the moment. So we need the government to be very bold, and I hope that the minister is going to be bold about making a statement that will make sure that we're moving closer towards finding more permanent solutions for ESCOM, and particularly from working with the private sector and giving more room to the private sector to produce electricity and supply it into the national grid, but obviously at the right price for the consumer industry.
This statement comes at a really difficult time for him. I mean, COVID-19's not finished. And so social spending has never been more important, perhaps, as it is now, and probably still needs to see some more for some time to come. But on the other hand, austerity and fiscal discipline is another thing that we really need to start to have as commonplace. So how does he balance these two things?
No, it's going to be a tough balancing act, but he was not going to accept to be the Minister of Finance in the country if he wanted to do easy things, if he wanted to make easy decisions. I will venture to say, Peter, we need potentially to revisit, without being too drastic, our social compact, because we don't have enough money coming into the national tax base, but we're spending just so much on social grants. As an example, I would say China many years ago, was willing to support the citizens, but only if they had one child. They had one child, the government would be okay to try and find a way to support. But with us, for example, the child grant in the country really doesn't make sense for people to have 5, 6, 7 children and continue to get state support. Why don't we maybe potentially limit the support to 2 children per person? And then that grant start to make sense, because we start to reduce the responsibility of the state to look after, people that are having many more children than they ideally should be because they are unemployed, Peter. So it's a tough balancing act, but I hope that he will make those very difficult decisions.
There may be small wins still at this stage, but one gets a sense that the economy is starting to tick up. Is that something that might encourage him?
Look, I mean, the government has collected more tax revenues than they had expected in February on their budget, and that is very good. I think some sections of the economy are working, but like I said, the engine for our ability to produce and manufacture and distribute locally and export is ESCOM. If ESCOM is not dealt with, I promise you, Peter, like today we had to cancel 2 of our meetings, and I imagine there's a lot more meetings being cancelled. There's a lot more production being put on hold because of ESCOM. So if there's anything that I believe the current leadership in the government must focus on between now and the next elections, and so too the next government that takes over, it's just sorting out ESCOM, probably spending as much money as is needed to make sure that we've got the right infrastructure, because we cannot expect to grow the economy and create jobs if we cannot answer the question that says just how much does ESCOM need, and we're going to find that money and resolve this problem.
All right. Are you in the same camp as analysts who are saying that we shouldn't expect too much tomorrow?
No, look, I am hoping to be surprised on the upside in terms of key decisions being made. I'm hoping that the minister indicates to us that we are managing to control our debt to GDP ratio. I'm hoping we're going to see the a better management of the usage of government funds and taxpayer monies. I'm hoping we're going to reduce unnecessary expenditure. I'm hoping people are going to be put behind bars that are abusing state resources, Peter. And again, there's a whole lot of things that we need to be focusing on, such as the reforms that were once suggested by former Minister Mboweni that were thrown out of the bin before they saw the light of day. I am hoping that we are working on making sure that we can restructure the economy to focus on those sectors that create a lot of jobs, because I believe that our people don't want grants, Peter. I believe they want rather jobs that are secure for the long time. And all we're asking for as business is, policies that will allow us to deliver on growth of the economy that will then solve the bulk of the problems that we're facing. So I hope Mr. Godongwana takes responsibility for the future of the country's finances and the potential growth of our economy by making the right decision and putting very stringent controls and potentially working with the legal authorities to make sure that any government person, any municipality that abuses resources is put to jail.
Owen, let's hope that the Minister of Finance is watching the programme right now and has been listening to you. And who knows, you may even be quoted tomorrow in Parliament. Thanks so much for joining us.
For the right reasons, hopefully, Peter. Thank you.
All right,
Cheers.
That's one of our regular contributors, Own Nkomo, speaking to us about the medium-term budget statement that's going to be delivered for the first time by our latest Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, tomorrow.